My name is Luke Pace and welcome to MMA Fancast. I'm joined by Gabrielle Giordano. Gabrielle, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you on the show. You're new to MMA. You're 1-0 as an amateur, so congratulations to that. And
Thank
you
you.
have a fight coming up for 247 Fighting Championships on their first trip to Johnstown in just over a week from today. How are you feeling?
I feel good. Feel ready to go. I'm excited to get down there.
It's going to be exciting. How close are you geographically to Johnstown? I know some of the fighters are local, some aren't.
Yeah, I'm about 3.5 hours away. I'm near Scranton, PA, so not too far, but
yeah, that's great. I'm born and raised in Allentown. I'm now living in Pittsburgh, so Scranton's a lot closer to my neck of the woods. So that is fantastic. Let's go backwards a little bit. You're 1-0. When was your debut fight? How did that go? Obviously, you picked up the win, which is fantastic, but how was that fight for you?
It was great. It was on February 8th of 2020, pretty much right before the shutdown, which is a little frustrating, but that's all right. I came in and kind of just executed the game plan the way we practiced it for weeks leading up to it, and was able to come out with the win. And it was nice. It was a good win.
That absolutely is the best option, when you're coming into an amateur MMA fight, your debut. Now, what was it like? Summarize the last year and a half. What was it like going right into lockdown in March, and then March became another March? Nobody thought it would take a year, and now here we are, about a year and a half. How was that whole training time for you, or did you have to take time off from training?
Yeah, so our gym had to shut down. We were closed for about 4 months, I want to say. So myself and a couple of other teammates, we would meet at one of the high schools. They had a field and a track, and our coach would actually come down, and we would try to just do some pad work outside as best we can, and a little bit of conditioning. But other than that, wasn't really doing anything too specific to skill training throughout that time, which is a little frustrating, but everyone was in the same boat, so wasn't worried about it too much. And then as soon as things opened back up and the gym opened back up, we were pretty much open all throughout, and fortunately didn't have to close again or anything. And we've been training since. So.
Oh, that is fantastic. What sports did you do prior to MMA, and what brought you into MMA now, I guess 2 or more years ago?
Yeah, so I played basketball and softball my whole life. Continued that throughout college. And I actually had a class with Tyler Mooney, who also trains at Scranton MMA. He fought a couple of years ago. We were sitting in class, and I had noticed his ear. He had a little bit of cauliflower going on. So I was just talking to him like, hey, do you do MMA? Because of course it was like Ronda's prime at that point. So everybody's watching Ronda, and we're watching those on Saturday nights. I'm like, hey, you train. He's like, yeah, I have a fight coming up. And we were talking back and forth. He's like, you should come try it. So my junior year of college, basketball season ended the next week. I went up to Scranton MMA and tried a class out. Loved everything about it. And pretty much just been there since, training through. And I trained throughout my senior year, on and off with basketball. And then as soon as I graduated, it was just training full time. So.
Wow. So I didn't realize we would be talking about college basketball, but where was your college, and what was that basketball career like for you?
It was great. Super, successful with my team. I played at Marywood University for 3 years. Conference championship, but made it pretty deep into the playoffs every year. Played with some really good people. My senior year, I made the jump to Wilkes University. I wanted the chance to play softball again. I missed it, and it just wasn't something I was able to do there. So transferred to Wilkes and played basketball and softball my senior year. While I was there, had a lot of fun doing it. And then just pretty much moved on.
Well, that shows a high level of resiliency to be able to transfer for your senior year. College, typically you get really connected. So what was that transition like, jumping to a whole new college, Wilkes University, in order to do not one sport, but 2?
It was great. So both the head coach and my assistant basketball coach actually took the job at Wilkes. So it made the transition super, super smooth for me. And then joining the softball team, it was great. Everyone was really welcoming. There really wasn't too much, animosity, and made some great relationships, great friendships from that. And I still have those to this day. So it was a good move. I'm happy I did it.
Well, that is fantastic. One of the things that's exciting about MMA as a sport is it's a combination of martial arts, but it also tends to bring in athletes that have a diverse athletic background, because up until recently, now there's a couple 5, 6 year olds practicing MMA as a kid, but most people aren't. So what was your position in softball?
In softball, I played shortstop.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, so shortstop is known for, quick explosivity and eye hand coordination and all of those things. So how did your role in basketball and shortstop play into, let's say, striking, grappling, any aspect of MMA?
I think the footwork of everything was the biggest part, especially when I started, boxing and kickboxing. There's a lot of pivoting and stepping out, reverse pivots and stuff like that. And it was very similar to what I've been doing, my whole life playing basketball. Softball, just the ability to kind of change directions quickly and explode and slow down, I think is a huge carryover and something that I continue to try to work on throughout. And I've tried not to lose that since stopping playing those.
Absolutely. I mean, you're coming in with a lot of techniques.
Yeah.
Softball has a lot of footwork. Basketball obviously has an incredible amount. I once coached University of Delaware volleyball players that came to my gym when I was coaching in Philly, and the footwork was fantastic because volleyball footwork, basketball footwork,
Yeah.
there's just a lot of footwork that comes from those sports. And so I'm thrilled. I'm sure your coach loved you having that ability to move your feet, know where your feet are, which is important. What was your quickest submission to pick up in jiu-jitsu, and what was your hardest, like, what am I doing in jiu-jitsu? If jiu-jitsu was challenging, because I would imagine going from stand-up sports to ground might have been. So what was your easiest, most fun, and what was the what am I doing submission on the ground for you?
Submission specifically, I think the Kimura and the Americana were probably the two easiest for
Yeah,
me to
sure.
pick up, just because they're so similar and, just the ability to push the arm out and frame it and grab the lock. I think those are what came naturally to me. Beyond that, we could go into leg locks for hours. Any sort of like De La Hiva guard, stuff like that is super, super tricky for me. So that's just something we've been working on. And of course, being MMA, I try not to play too much on my back. Anytime we're getting there, it's just looking for a quick reversal, and whether it's to stand or just control from there and start to work my own guard passing. So I try not to get too jujitsu, but out of camp, I am looking to perfect that jujitsu game. So I do play in that realm a little bit.
Sure. You bring up a really good point that if we go backwards 25 years to the creation of the UFC and what MMA really was designed for, it was designed for a person not to change their sport, to just bring whatever sport it was, taekwondo, jiu-jitsu, whatever sport it was, and not change a thing and see which one. And of course, over the 25 years, we've realized Ronda Rousey, as you mentioned, kind of showed you need to be able to blend your skills. And some pure jiu-jitsu practitioners might be upset to hear that in MMA, it's not a great idea to stay on your back. But obviously, you have an MMA mindset. When did you start picking up the MMA mindset that being on your back and being comfortable for too long, it's not that there can't be submissions from your back, but like you said, passes and sweeps. I think we've seen in the last 5 years at the top level of UFC, people are spending much less time on their back because of elbows, ground and pound, and just the dominance of what that position is. And so when did you start learning the MMA kind of game plan?
Probably during my first camp. Coming into it, I knew she was a little bit more of an experienced grappler than I was at that point. So we spent a lot of time doing, takedown defense. And then pretty much we would work just like those micro positions where I would be in a horrible position on the ground, pretty much fighting from my back, just to reverse that. And that's when I was able to really start to like dive into those specific positions. And then we've pretty much been working them, throughout, even prior to knowing about this fight. And just like we always talk about, those positions are what makes a difference. Of course you can have every submission in the book from the bottom, but again, sometimes, people have heavy pressure, that heavy wrestler stance. So we have to be able to handle that as well.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Are you spending any time in the gi, or are you doing all no gi for your jiu-jitsu grappling practice?
So prior to knowing about the fight, I did train in the gi 2 or 3 times a week. And then we have specific no gi sessions throughout the week.
Sure.
As soon as we knew about the fight, I would still take my jiu-jitsu classes and work a few things in the gi. But then as soon as we got into our rounds, we automatically went to no gi for right now. But outside of camp, yeah, I do train in the gi.
Absolutely. Well, I'm sure what you miss about the gi would be the grips. What do you miss the most? Am I right? The grips?
Yeah.
What? Yeah.
So the gi, I think it makes it easier in terms of grips and moving around and stuff, but I actually enjoy no gi a little bit better. I like those scramble positions. I think it's easier to slip out of some submissions when, you don't have the gi on and someone isn't constantly pulling down on your neck. So for me, I actually do prefer no gi. The gi, I definitely get caught in a little bit more in the gi, which is fun. Big jujitsu gym that I come from, I have a ton of training partners that are, really high level in jujitsu. So it's nice to work with them and change up my game a little bit and solve the puzzle in different ways.
Absolutely. Well, one of the things that's so important in all of MMA, but particularly the jiu-jitsu side, is to make it harder for yourself in training than it will be in fighting. So doing gi for defense so that you're used to them having more grips and more control of you, then getting to MMA where a lot of those things aren't happening, I think makes a big deal. Now, jiu-jitsu wise, there's elements, let's say you're on top and you're kind of close to them. Have you been practicing legal strikes? Because in novice MMA, you're allowed to strike below the clavicle on the ground. And we've seen just in the amateur novice world how fighters are beginning to use smart, solar plexus strikes and chest strikes to try to make someone's jujitsu game off their back harder, if somebody has that game set. Have you been practicing some of the striking elements?
Yeah, we've been working that a lot, specifically more in the no-gi sessions. And then we have an MMA practice session on Saturday mornings where we work those specifically. Nothing too crazy, just taps so that obviously we keep our partners safe and they know it. But there's definitely times where, I'm working for something and one of my coaches will be yelling, like bodies open. And I'm just not even thinking about that I am able to punch and just trying to get out of that jujitsu mindset. But it's definitely something we focused on the last couple of weeks.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. And it sounds like Scranton MMA has, which is wonderful. It's always great when a gym has a lot of skills. I've been hearing you talk about jiu-jitsu no-gi practice, gi practice, and then there's MMA practice. What type of striking skills? Is it a Muay Thai striking? Is it a kickboxing striking? Like what type of striking game do they have there?
So it's fun. We really try to blend everything, which is nice. I just recently started teaching a couple classes at MMA. I teach the beginner classes, which is fun. So we have our basic beginners curriculum where we show them the basics. And then once they advance on from that, in our advanced classes, we will occasionally take, more of a traditional Muay Thai approach. But my coach is Steve Wilson, formerly a professional MMA fighter. So he likes to blend a lot of the techniques, which I think fits more into, what we're doing. We don't have a ton of, just strikers or just kickboxers. Everybody, does a good job of blending everything. So that's usually the approach that we try to take, but, we'll delve off. And if someone's a little bit more interested in kickboxing, we'll definitely, stand up a little more, posture up a little bit and have some fun with it. But it's nice because I think we get a well-rounded idea of different techniques. And we always say, like, just keep adding to the toolbox. Not everything is going to work for everyone in the room, but, we expect everyone to try it out. And then you kind of make that technique your own.
Absolutely. I mean, we've seen that at the highest of levels is everybody has their own aspect on whatever skill set they have. Now, you mentioned getting into some coaching, obviously in the beginner basic MMA. What was something that you felt like clicked better for you once you were teaching it? That move from doing it to teaching it always leads to more kind of processing because you don't just do it. Now you have to teach somebody else to do it.
Yeah. I think it made me study techniques a lot more, which I wasn't doing prior to that. It's kind of like, all right, coach said, this is what we're doing. This is what I'm going to take out of it. Whereas, now you're teaching that. So I want to make sure I had all of the details of each technique. And I think I've been able to focus in on some of the minor things of just throwing, weight distribution on the jab and making sure we're turning everything over on the cross and it frames on our uppercuts. And it's kind of like you keep repeating those things every week as you teach it. But I think it's helped the smaller aspects of my game, those little micro things instead of the big picture, which is nice.
Of course. Yeah. And another thing that coaching, I think, really brings up, like you said, you have to be able to break it down, but you also, your eyes get better because it's so easy to be kind of self-blind when you're throwing at any position, but particularly strikes, because it feels good. You know, people that leave, I always wonder when I watch the highest level and people have like technical problems in striking, you think, why did they get there? Well, it's because it felt comfortable and no one ever caught it, or they just didn't feel like it was an issue. But then you see a kid doing it or a beginner doing it, you're like, why would they be doing that? You know, so that's really cool.
Yeah.
What is the most rewarding aspect of being a coach for the time you've been doing it?
I think just seeing people come in and get better, you know, and it's honestly, and you can see like people who are really, really into it. They're constantly asking questions after class and they just like want to be a sponge and just continue to keep learning. And I love seeing them. You know, I may see someone on a Monday and they may botch, you know, a technique. And by Thursday, I'm like, wow, like, you know what I mean? That's really starting to come along. We have a few younger kids in the gym that are, you know, looking to fight at some point. They're still far out from that, but I really enjoy working with them. Just because they're super, super committed and they're just, say, like I said, just want to take in as much knowledge as they can, which is awesome. So like seeing them grow over the past, just the couple months that I've been teaching has been, you know, probably the most rewarding thing for me.
Well, it really is. You know, being a coach is its own sport. You know, we'll have corners and things on here talk about the difference between being a fighter for those that have been professional fighters, and then also what it's like to have a limited influence as a coach. You know, coaches can do a lot, but then they also have to allow their fighter to kind of do it. So there's a lot there. Speaking of all this about coaching, did you coach any of your other sports? Obviously, as a collegiate athlete, I would assume you spent some time coaching softball, basketball, and what was that like for you?
Yeah. So I coached some younger kids, you know, throughout growing up. And then for the last 3 years, I actually was one of the assistant women's basketball coaches at Wilkes. So pretty much stayed on since graduating, and I'm going into my third season there. So it's the same thing, you know, and for, you know, obviously in college, you have pretty much the same team throughout 4 years. So you see freshmen come in who are, you know, almost like shell shocked at, you know, the difference in play and everything. And then you see them leave as seniors and they're just absolutely totally different kids. And not only as basketball players, but just as like young adults, like going into the world and then starting their lives from there. That's definitely super rewarding.
That absolutely is. And since we've been talking about coaches, who are you bringing with you? Who's in your corner? I believe you'll have two
Yep.
there, you know, August 21st at the Cambria War Memorial Arena for 247 Fighting Championship. So who are you bringing with you?
So I'm bringing my head MMA coach, who's Steve Wilson, and then my jiu-jitsu coach, who's Frank Alonia, who will both be in my corner with me that night.
That's fantastic. And are they the two that worked with you for your first fight?
Yeah.
And what was it like for you? I mean, obviously, you had the fight was your most important, but what was it like for you having those 45 seconds on the stool, and how much did you take in from your coaches?
It was nice. We didn't have to make too many adjustments mid-fight. And at that point, it was just kind of like hearing their voices, like, you know, keep doing what you're doing. And it's nice. I think that reassurance and being able to come over for 45 seconds and kind of catch your breath and settle down. It's like, you know, you're in a good spot. Obviously, like I never fought before. So I'm like, am I winning at this point? You know, like you really never know. So I think just going over and kind of just like settling down, you know, any adjustments that need to be made and then moving on. It was weird because I was able to pick their voices out of the crowd over everyone, which I thought was kind of interesting. It was obviously pretty loud in there, but I think they do like a really good job of being clear and concise with some directions, and it's just worked out for us. And then throughout rounds, we try to keep it the same so that we always have the same terminology and there's no confusion when I'm in there.
Sure. Yeah, that goes to a whole nother thing, you know, communication. Sometimes coaches get excited and they call for something that an athlete's never done and they don't know what it is because, you know, a coach may have a deeper toolbox than the athlete did. And so I think coaches, good corners are aware of that. Like you said, using the same terminology, recognizing that a new fighter might be a little slow to respond to a call. So that's exciting. And going into this matchup, what do you know about your opponent? Are you game planning for her, or is it just about being a better, more improved Gabrielle?
Yeah. So, I mean, definitely for me, I want to see an improvement, you know, from the last fight. Obviously it's still amateur. So at this point, I'm really just looking for experience and to see where I'm at. We don't have too much information. I know her record and I know she's a southpaw, But, other than that, that's pretty much all we have. But, it's just whoever's in there. I'm excited and kind of want to see where the work has been. It's the work the last, year and a half pays off and where I'm at right now.
Absolutely. Well, I'm sure the last year and a half has been leading to this, which is super exciting. What do you, what, if any, prediction do you have, or what would you say to somebody coming to watch your fight who may not know you? Obviously, you're new to the game, and what could you kind of tell them to look out for?
I think it's gonna be fun. Fun, fast pace. Look to put the pressure on a little bit here and there, but again, we have a pretty safe game plan and how we're gonna take each round. So, we're prepared to go 3 rounds. If it ends in one, it ends in one. I don't have any predictions. Again, not knowing too much about her, but we're prepared for 3, and I know I'm gonna see the best Melissa Sheppy that night. So I think we're prepared for that.
Well, it is really exciting. It's been great having you on the show. I love when I meet people and they have a wide range of athletic background. And then also, it sounds like your mind really is loving the mental part of MMA. So it'll be great to meet you in person and to call your fight. It'll be a lot of fun. I'm sure you're selling tickets. So anybody watching this, get tickets from your gym, Scranton MMA, or from you. And also, tickets are available at 247fighting.com. So best skills to you. Can't
Thank
wait
you.
for a week, August 21st. And thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Have a good one.
You too.